traders, Nikolai here with Tape Reading Concepts. I want to take you over my trading for the last couple of days in both crude oil and the gold market. Had a tremendous run here, pretty much nailing everything that I went for. Somewhat conservative posture. Let's quickly look at what the market offered us Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm usually cautious with my Monday trading because the context is still emerging. Here in crude oil, overnight within the second session of the week, the Tuesday session, price was working a major base here in the lows, close to 81.20 in this case. Strong progression up, and in the early morning when I usually show up, it took a sudden turn and sentiment shifted to rotate all the way back to the downside. This is a familiar template for me. It's a mean reverting market, or one that describes price action with broad strokes. You can see large moves, minor pullbacks, and a large range. It was very interesting to see how price will shape up here close to the bottoms that were already defined from Monday. And indeed, we got very stretched here. We saw lower prices below 81.10. However, the buyers did show their hand. It would have been a better entry if I went for the trade somewhere here on the first pendulum pullback. But since the last structural minor high here was not taken out yet, you can see that the sellers wrested control potentially at lower levels. I decided to wait and see the buyer show me another strong hand before I participate. The moment this long broke, I entered the first compression pocket beyond the high, being fully aware that my staying power with that high of an entry is not that good, because the protection I should be seeking for this position is ideally right below this base, and that's a hefty stop. That's why I took a partial position, and I was looking to add up to the position if something compelling was offered a little later, closer to that major base. Indeed, if I was not in this position here, I likely would have participated here where price clustered on a similar slightly higher low, suggesting that we're on the right side of that turning point, seeing now higher lows and higher highs. However, since I was already in the position, this was not a low enough price for me to add to the position. I would have liked this to be a little bit lower. That was never offered, but the buyers still nevertheless took control of this market, send it to higher prices. I was looking for the highs of the session here overnight to get challenged. This was a place where I was monitoring the market very narrowly because of the potential lower high and similar structure. Had price here failed a third time, I definitely would have pulled the plug and take my money off the table. But the only two of these and then the third drive pretty much took it through the high. And the moment the stops got run here into the vertical move, I was happy to terminate the position. That happened to be relatively close to the top. You see just about $100 short of the actual top here below 83. And then I saw here that these late buyers are having a hard time pushing to new highs. It's a structure that is called heavy lifting. Because of the heavy lifting, the moment that the edge broke, you can see that both the slope and the little edge here broke. Price followed through a little below this low as well. So I was like, all right, that's my cue. Look for a nice lean entry, different than what I was much more conservative here in the morning. Here I was looking for the mean reverting move. Again, this is the template for the day. The mean reverting move towards the middle of this range. There was a bit of a slowdown here. That opportunity might have failed here on what would have been another higher low. But we got the second leg, and because of the potential for a two-wave pullback here, I decided to take my 40 ticks or two handles off the table here. I could have had another handle here by the end of the session, which would have been closer to the middle, but I like to terminate my crude oil positions by about 2:30 when the majority of the volatility leaves this market, so I don't like to linger in these thin episodes later in the session. I was happy to take my two handles here, making the market pay me in both directions. Indeed, we did rotate here to the middle and also through the middle in the overnight session on Wednesday. Once again here today during our live session for Tape Reading Concepts, we're discussing the events here in the early morning where we had a conical section close to where the buyers wrested control here around 81.50 yesterday. You can see that the cluster here of buy limit orders, which the orderly selling was encountering. Orderly selling, you can see here the measured pullbacks. Definitely some buying interest. There was a little bit of a push up, but the swing high held here. On the way down here, you can see that the sellers were exerting pressure. We were anticipating that there will be an attempt on the bottom. There was a potential last photon here, but the rally didn't manage to break. The frequency was very clear for us, as we are adept at reading the tape, what's going to happen at these lows, that there will be an attempt. We didn't expect such a major collapse, but of course, since that's a multi-day structural low, there were a lot of stops build up here, and as these stops got run, price happened to hang here right around 9 o'clock into thin air, below $81 per barrel. It momentarily stabilized, and then we got this trigger bar here, this limit buy bar, which suggested that we're not only going to test the door, but if we see the requisite strength, we might actually go back above the reference point, which would make this an engineered move, or what we call wash. That indeed happened to be the case. Lots and lots of strength, no difficulty for the buyers to recover the level. I did call this opportunity in real time in our live session here. Great opportunity here to get long, close to the reference point with a stop that should be somewhat below the 50% pullback on this pendulum pullback. The buyers did step in on the backside of this frequency, just textbook action. Horizontal reestablished itself as well, and the rest is history, as they say. Structure broke. Since I was in a live class, I couldn't participate here, but as soon as we closed the session, I was looking to enter this position. The market was generous enough to give me another pendulum pullback here to prices that were close to where the buyers took control last time, somewhat similar to what I did earlier in the week here with the two drives from the bottom. You could still trade on the second one if the price is low enough to give you the safety on the stop. In this case here, I did manage to get an acceptable price, and I was looking for a trigger event. It's this strong bar here on the way up that made me look for the entry right below 81.50, which, mind you, is where I already knew that there was buying interest earlier in the session. Now that the book is clean following the wash, great opportunity to get filled here. And this trigger bar here was very similar to the trigger bar that I got at the bottom, and to the way that the market took the turn here last time. So same pattern, same place, same development expected. It was a little bit of back and forth here, but ultimately highs. I used the only viable upward sloping frequency that developed this morning here for a target, and it happened to be beautiful confluence with the overnight high. Of course, we got hit here with the profit stick on the oil report, but the volatility being what it is, it's part of the game. And the oil market was indeed looking to go higher here, but I gotta tell you that I was done with this market, focusing on trading the indices. A second opportunity could have been taken here as price was looking to stabilize above the overnight session's high for a potential double the range. And indeed, you can see that it's not even it's not even 5 o'clock yet, and this market is literally gonna get saved by the bell here. 83.60, my exit was 82.60, so full $1,000 higher here. This market really stretching. Let's look at Comex gold here. After building on Monday a platform or a solid base into the 1760s overnight within the Tuesday session, price did flower well through the 70s and into the mid 80s here in the morning in the US pre-market, as I show up to see how the positions will form here. We were already very stretched. We had one pendulum pullback, and then there was a drive to new highs here, 1786. Then we had a higher low and another new high. So this was the sloped coil, or the frequency that I was looking at. And then really expected that price will zoom here through the highs, but instead we got a very strong reaction. And since this was the third drive into this upward sloping reference point from earlier, this really created the potential for the price action to go down here and fill the empty space that was below. The ideal placement would have been on this pendulum pullback, which is just about halfway from this high. However, I really wanted to make sure that the buyers get beaten here and that they give some ground, so I waited for some structure to build up here and for price to go lower. You can see that it not only cracked the upsloper here, but it also managed to crack this bottom here, suggesting that as the ice is cracking, it's likely will fall through below, and there will be a cold shower for all these buyers that are in this mature position. I did manage to get filled here on what's possibly the best price, the confluence between the last structural minor high here and the upsloper. couldn't have been happier with the placement, and I was expecting that we're gonna get lower. I was expecting actually to hit the overnight lows here, so I was willing to linger later into the session, but as the market got leaner here into the afternoon session, again right around 2 o'clock, I decided to take my profits off the table. Sure, overnight it happened that that was a relatively good exit. We did take a sharp turn to the upside here, and this morning, as I was following the price action, again looking at that mean reversion and that steep climb, I was very confident that this market is likely going to go towards 1800, up towards our sloped reference point. However, there was an episode of heavy buying here, and while I was expecting only a mild correction with structure to hold, instead price collapsed here, parabolically squeezing many of the weaker hands or the late buyers in this position. Not one but two levels of structure broke, yet price managed here to find buyers right above 1775. We did see a swap area here, a double top, and as price leaned back to the downside, I was interested in potentially picking up a long in the middle of this overnight range. This was probably the highest that I was willing to buy. You can see here the two reference points which defined my zone of interest, and that was very close to my preferred buying area. My stop would have been well behind the already established low. So indeed, if this was some type of a consensus in the middle of the overnight range, would have been long in the lower half of this current box. Happened to be a great price pivoted right away. I was very cautiously looking at what's going to happen here, since we were nearing that reference point around 1786 from yesterday. Price clustered a little too long, just enough here below the low to make me abandon this position. Admittedly a conservative posture, but I was looking to add incremental profits to my already great bottom line. As price topped out here but fell short of the high, I also jumped on the pendulum pullback looking for development to the downside, but the momentum promptly fizzled here, so I abandoned this position and the volatility died down. This would have been only a modestly better winner here to the close of the session, but overall pretty happy with how this one played out here. Pretty much a clean slate. All the positions attempted did play out one way or another. Again, admittedly on conservative posture. This tape reading concept. Let me know if you like this content. Catch you guys in the next video.